1. Background. I work at a summer camp, and this week I was last minute called to be part of the Learn to Bike camp. I am no bike mechanic. I can fix basic issues like replacing a seat or adding a bell, etc., provided I have the materials. But I am by no means a bike expert. I'm far better at riding than I am at fixing. Even outside of bikes, I'm still trash with my hands. I don't work on cars, woodwork, or anything of that nature. The closest I've come to bike repair in the past year would be opening a gate, and I still have trouble with that. I don't know why, but those little metal locks always make a fool out of me. Unfortunately today, little Timmy's bike seat was too high. Since neither I nor my site supervisor was able to find tools on site, and since the bolt was so rusted over, meaning I wouldn't just be able to force it with my hand, I was forced to call his parents. I still don't believe it was too high, considering both his tippy toes touched the ground, but sure, I'll make a call. How hard could it be? Here's the transaction. Hi, I'm calling on behalf of the camp. Hello. Hi, yes, I wanted to tell you that Timmy found his bike seat to be a bit high. Okay, so fix it. Unfortunately, we can't, as we don't have the tools needed on site. Would it be possible for this to be fixed when he goes home? We can put him on a spare bike for the time being. What? You're a bike camp that can't fix that? Yes, unfortunately, we don't currently have... How could a bike camp not have the proper tools? Now, to be fair, it is kind of stupid that we're missing basic tools. The parents are required to bring fully functional and ready bikes, but we should be able to fix basics like this. Unfortunately, the higher-ups just didn't provide this to us. Here's where it gets bizarre, though. So you can't fix anything? Well, no, I can fix basic. So what happens if my kid's bike is disassembled? Then what would you do? What? What are you going to do if it fully needs to be assembled? I clarified if she meant for me to be able to fully reassemble a totaled or brand new bike, to which she confirmed that was what she was referring to. At this point, I'm thinking, look, ma'am, I'm a teenager making minimum wage to teach kids how to bike. And it's not like this is a luxurious camp, it's pretty damn cheap. And for the price, pretty good quality in my opinion. So, what would you do? We'd arranged to have the necessary fixes made. Yes, champion of the year here. After that, I went into customer support mode, basically agreeing with whatever she said. She kept talking about the camps. Again, to be honest, they should have given us basic tools, and my incompetence. The conversation seemed to keep coming back to that disassembled or totaled bike repair, and I kept thinking there's 2 bike shops within a 15-minute walk. Surely they could build a bike from scratch or fix a totaled bike. Could we ship it over there? I kind of lost track of time, but the next thing I know, a bunch of my coworkers are asking for an update. And when I speak with the parent next, so I guess it was long enough for multiple people to walk in and out and overhear the conversation. I'm not going to say it had a nice happy ending, because it didn't. She did not end that call happy. The only saving grace was the husband picked up the kid and didn't say much. 2. A short story from a while back. The night before a friend's wedding, and a few beers had been imbibed, and I called a taxi in the early hours to get a ride home. We were going in separate directions, so a group of us were waiting next to the bars and hotels when a taxi turned up. The front window was partly down, so I asked if it was for my name, and the driver said yes, so I opened the front door. I didn't notice the back seat was still occupied until I heard, "You fucking mind?" in the loudest Cockney accent from a lady in the back seat, cradling a sleeping child. "Sorry, love, didn't see you back there," I responded in my quiet, definitely nowhere near London accent. "I've got fucking kids in here, you can't," she bellowed. I looked again, and her husband, or whatever, was next to her with another sleeping child on his lap. I looked at her husband, and the 2 poor sleeping babies, and thought of the one response that was justified. I put my finger to my lips and quietly shushed them, lest they wake the children. This did not go well. "Do you tell my wife to shush your fucking cunt or I'll smash your face in," said the husband. "My babies are in this car. Get the fuck away from my kids. I've got 2 sleeping kids. Don't tell me to fucking shush your cunt," responded the wife. At this point I just laughed, thinking that someone is recording this for YouTube or something, but these fools were serious. "Dare you laugh at me, I'm from London?" I'd had enough and responded simply, "You're nowhere near London, no one gives a fuck, you're not special because you've got kids. Now get the fuck out of my taxi." At this point the lads I was with approached, and these two heroes climbed out of the car, looking as though they were ready to put their precious kids in the gutter to fight a bunch of lads after a night of drinking. Husband was bravely gobbing off while removing bags from the boot of the taxi, and wife was squaring up, screaming expletives, while her kids slept soundly. Fortunately, despite the rook of beer we'd had, the lads didn't escalate, and simply tried to process what the hell was happening. They carried their children and crap away, shouting about how hard they were as if they were Vikings or Klingons or something slightly more intimidating. It was surreal as hell. A taxi driver had just picked them up from the station and was delivering them to a hotel. I got in and bid farewell to the lads and went home. 3. The context. I am now 18 and I recently took a job at a popular theme park in the UK. We don't generally get Karens or entitled parents in the UK, as people are generally polite to each other. I've explained before that I am autistic and have dyspraxia, a hypermobility issue that causes me to be a clumsy nerd most of the time. These make me extremely anxious and kind of antisocial. But I still got the job for ride operation due to some slight engineering experience in college. I'm also a very high metabolic person, meaning I'm unnaturally skinny. If I breathe in, you can clearly see my ribs. This means I have trouble with keeping my energy up, especially if I don't sleep during the night. So on to the story. On the night before the story takes place, I woke up at 1 a.m. with an incredibly painful leg cramp that kept me up the rest of the night. Usually, I get up for work at 6 a.m. and then head off to work at 8:45. I don't drive, and usually my mother or stepfather drop me down at the park. That way I have enough time to get a cup of tea and get ready for what ride I'm supposed to be ready on. That day, though, I was absolutely exhausted, and I was put on one of the most activity-heavy rides in the park, which requires me to walk a ton and let people in and out. And the leg cramp eased up at around lunchtime. But then it got hot. Stupid hot. The heat, as many people know, causes exhaustion and fatigue, so my tiredness continued to increase throughout the day. Then at 3 p.m., we finish operations at 5 or 5:30. I completely lost my energy and collapsed against a kiosk. There weren't any guests at the time I collapsed, and I didn't have a ride assistant, so I didn't have any way to contact any of my team leaders. Then the Banshee showed up. She was a typical entitled parent, rich-looking, kids around her ankles, the like. This is a conversation. "What are you doing on the floor?" "I'm exhausted and I don't think I can move." "Well, just let us on the ride and you can rest." "I can't. I don't know if I can move." She then became visibly more aggressive and twice as loud. "Well then, we'll just let ourselves in and get on." I'm becoming more anxious. "No, you can't do that." "Why not? A lazy employee like you can do it, so why can't I?" "Yes, I'm not lazy. I'm collapsing because of my lack of energy today." Then, to my immense relief, one of my seniors showed up, just as the entitled Banshee attempted to open the gate to the ride and get her kids on it. "Hey, miss, get back through the gate." "Why?" "We just want to get on the ride and this lazy bitch won't let us." As we had been talking, a few other families had shown up, and one of them, bless their souls, had seen what was happening and had alerted the senior. "Amy, you okay?" "I don't think I can keep going, senior, and this woman almost tried to get on the ride herself." The senior turns to the Banshee. "Why are you attempting to operate the ride yourself, miss? You know that is against our rider policy." "Just let us on the ride. My kids are tired and want to do this ride." "Yes, I'm working on that, but the well-being of my employee is more important right now." The Banshee got more vocal and very, very loud. She began screaming and complaining about customer service or whatever. My senior called the office on the kiosk phone and called for a code 6. For a little explanation, a code 6 is a customer being aggressive, and it usually sends every team leader in the park to come running, which is about 10 people. The team leader showed up and began to attempt to calm the banshee down, but when she didn't, they escorted her and her kids out. My senior then called another operator over and got the first aid team to get me off to the staff room, where my mother picked me up from work. Well, that was one way to spend a day at work. Well, I hope the banshee was banned from the park or something. Hope you guys enjoyed this person's story of entitlement. Have a good day, guys. 4. What I find most weird about this is that my car wasn't anything super special. It was just a yellow 2010 V6 Chevy Camaro with black stripes, purchased in 2009, as the production years tend to run. When I bought it, it was super cheap because the passenger side door had been smashed in somehow, and there were already 130,000 miles on the odometer. But the title was still good somehow. No idea why, nor do I really care. It was sold to me via proxy. All I know is the car looked like a good deal, so I bought it. A friend of mine who works in auto body fixed it for me. He said that most of the damage was to the door itself, and I just needed a new door after he made a few tweaks to make sure everything was straight. Together, we managed to find a door at a salvage yard that was the same color. A little work, and the car looked almost new. And it became my fun ride to commute to work or drive around when I didn't feel like using my other car. I didn't do any modifications to it. I'm not one of those guys that's into speed or crazy mods. I liked the car because it looked cool and the gas mileage wasn't too bad with the V6. In fact, I wanted a V6 Camaro because I'd heard that they're usually in better condition than the ones with a V8 because people drive the V6 more for looks than power, and don't gas it as much. I drove that Camaro for a year before running into a random Karen at a supermarket last year in September. Those places tend to draw Karens in regularly, especially in the state I live in. I've seen many Karens, but was lucky to hardly ever be noticed by them. I was shopping for some stuff to make dinner, and was about to head home, when I found the Karen and her young son all over my car after exiting the store. I'm guessing the boy was around 4 years old, and his mother was taking pictures of the kid sitting on my hood, while the kid kept smiling and gleefully saying, "Bumblebee!" Yes, I understand the reference, and I've heard it all before. I don't like people messing with my property and told the kid to get off. The Karen took one look at me and told me to mind my own business. Now, I'm 29, male, but I have a bit of a baby face, and my casual clothing made me look like a teenager, so I guess to her, I couldn't be someone who had anything to do with such a nice car. That's actually a pretty common car. I told the Karen to get off my Camaro, and she bluntly told me that there was no way it was my car because I'm too young. I pulled out my keys and hit the alarm button on the remote. That made the alarm start blaring for a second, and her kid jumped off, all while screaming and crying because I'd frightened him. But rather than pay attention to her crying child, the Karen came running up to me at full speed and managed to shove me hard enough that I fell over. The next part is a bit hazy. I got a bump on the head, and this crazy bitch slurred every word she was screaming at me. She stepped on my arm and pulled the keys from my hand before I really had a chance to react, though she didn't really hurt me much. She was not a big woman, only around 5'2" or so, and a twig, while I'm 6 feet and over 170 pounds. When I got to my feet, she was comforting her crying kid and telling him that I was a mean person. I had told her to return my keys, but she got hissy and said there was no way the Camaro was mine. I again stated it was, and I would only give her one more chance to return my keys. She didn't. Instead, she handed them to her kid, who proceeded to start playing with the buttons on the remote and unlock the doors. I'd had enough and got my phone out to call the police. When Karen saw I was on the phone, she started screaming and charging at me again. Though this time I easily dodged her, and she nearly fell on the asphalt and screamed I'd assaulted her. I never even touched her, and said as much out loud. The 911 operator was listening to everything that was going on, and I quickly told her where we were while this insane woman was still screaming at me, and 2 police cars had shown up before long. At this point, the Karen had locked herself in my car with her son and started the engine to run the AC. I explained everything to the police, and they knocked on the window of my Camaro to get Karen to open it and give them her side of the story. She claimed the car to be hers and that I was just some stupid broke-ass teenager that tried to carjack her, then bragged that she'd taken me down. The officer asked if that meant she'd shoved me over, to which she bluntly said yes. I told the police to look in my glove compartment. In there was my insurance card and a copy of my registration, and they could compare the name on my license. When the Karen heard that, she got out of the car and finally admitted it wasn't hers. But then she said there was no way it could be mine, and that she just took the keys from me to find the real owner. That quickly earned her some shiny new bracelets, and she was put screaming into the back of a police car. The parking lot had cameras, so it was easy to prove the assault, though I only really got scratches, a bruise on my arm where she'd stepped on it, and a small bump on the head. After the Karen was taken back to the station, they found she was high on drugs, which explains why she was so nuts. I, of course, pressed charges, though my testimony wasn't really needed, since the police had both CCTV from the parking lot and the audio from my phone call. It turned out to be the Karen's 3rd offense, and she got 2 years in prison. Oh, and her kid was taken from her. The whole incident made me rethink owning the Camaro because it had been a magnet for people that had bothered me a lot, so I sold it. Basically got back everything I had into it anyway, so I broke even. I doubt I'll want to own another sports car again. I know that the Karen lost her son because of social media. I found out who she was and looked into her social media profile. She had already blogged her woes, calling me a monster because CPS took her kid over a little misunderstanding. I don't know about the rest of you, but if CPS took the kid that fast, she was already on their watch list. And I know she was on drugs because it was mentioned in court. My testimony wasn't needed, but that didn't mean I wasn't there to watch. I took time off work just to go. She gave me a death glare when she was sentenced. Five. To preface this, I recently graduated from university and landed myself a pretty well-paying job working as an analyst for a major banking company. My very first day is the week after next. A couple of months ago, I moved to a gated apartment complex in a wealthy suburb of DC and had been making use of their gym. On the days I work my upper body, I use a game called Fitness Boxing 2 with their in-gym punching bag. Now, my community regularly does apartment tours that include their facilities, so I will see one of the employees walking around with people, and early today, it was a woman with her 8 or 9-year-old son. The kid immediately takes an interest in the game I'm playing, and I offer to let him try it out, but his mom called him back, and I was nearly done anyway, so I put my Switch in its case and put it in the cubbies that people put their things in. Now, a few minutes later, I am on one of the other pieces of equipment, and I see the kid walking out with his mom carrying my Switch case. I immediately knew it was mine because I have a very brightly colored one, but even then I go to double check that my Switch was gone, and sure enough it was. Now, everyone's been an annoying kid at some point, so I'm actually not particularly mad. I catch up to them in the tour guide and speak to the mom, telling her that her son walked out with my Switch. I figured she'd be embarrassed and have him give it back, treating it like a learning lesson or something, but instead she takes it from him and says, "No, that's his game, you must be mistaken." I was bewildered. My initial reaction was, "This isn't funny," because I could not fathom how someone would be so quick to lie about something like this. Now I look at the tour guide. I don't know her really, but we do see each other on a regular basis, and I'm really trying to be consistent with going to the gym. She knows it's mine, tries to ask the woman if she's sure, and of course, this is when she gets angry and says that if I keep harassing her and her family, she'll call the police. On one hand, I'm like, good, call them, because I can readily prove it's mine, and we'll get to that. On the other hand, and I want to preface this by saying that I believe in getting rid of all identity-based assumptions. But this is a belief, not reality. The reality is that if you're a man, especially a black man like myself, who has gotten at least semi-muscular, when you're in a public argument with a hysterical white woman, you have to pick your words very, very carefully. So of course she calls the cops, yelling scary that an African-American is harassing her and her son and trying to steal his game. And like I said, wealthy suburb, so a police officer is on the scene within minutes. I have to thank my lucky stars that the cop was smart enough to not immediately take sides, and simply walked up to ask what was going on. So of course I let her go first, with her once again saying that I've been following her and her son. We were literally in the apartment clubhouse lobby, and trying to grab his game. After the cops look at me, I put on my calmest, most docile voice and say, "That's not her son's Switch, it's mine. He took it from the gym cubbies, and if you have her open the case and turn it on, I will prove that it's mine instantly because my Switch has a lock on it." And this is when the tour lady also says that she's pretty sure it's mine too. For those who don't know, you can jury-rig a lock code on the Switch using the parental controls app, so that you'd have to put in a PIN to play games or reset the Switch. It doesn't stop you from buying games though, unsurprisingly. The woman, of course, doesn't want to do this, saying I've caused her enough trouble, but luckily the cop wanted to hear me out. So this woman takes the Switch out of the case and turns it on. Firstly, I point to the profile at the top, which is of my me that looks exactly like me. This woman manages to turn on a dime and say they just recently bought it from a friend that looks exactly like me. So I respond with, "Did that friend give you the parental controls password?" "That's mine. I'm the parent. So turn it off." "I don't have to show anything to you." She immediately turns it off again and tries to put it away. But luckily, once again, this cop says that she has to show if it is really hers. She turns it on and pauses because she has absolutely no idea how it works. So I kindly say, "You press the button at the top to prompt the PIN." Then I get my phone out. So she tries to put in a random combination, and of course it doesn't work. And the interesting thing about the Switch parental controls is that if you put it in wrong, it sends a notification to the app, so within 30 seconds, I was showing the cop, "Your PIN was entered incorrectly" pop-up. Finally, this woman starts apologizing, saying it was an honest mistake, and hands me back my Switch and the case, and has the audacity to ask the tour lady to continue the tour. The cop says that it would be best that she leaves, and says that he's going to escort her to the car. This is when she gets mad at the complex, and says that she's never giving them her business, and she gets walked out the door. That's honestly what ticks me off. There's no happy ending. I have every game I've bought in the 4 years I've owned this Switch in that case, so between that and the Switch, stealing is well into the grand theft range. If the cop had immediately been against me, I would have been in jail by now. I would have lost my job that I haven't even started yet. And all the work I've put in for the past years to get here. For something they would have quickly found out they can't even use in the first damn place. And all she got was a nice stroll to her vehicle. I guess that's better than potentially having her crotch goblin as a neighbor. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to The Impractical Proudness of Parents. Ipop, episode 93. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. If you enjoyed the video, then please do hit the like button and share the video with at least one person. Think of that. If this video gets like 2,000 views, and about half of you share it with one person, that's 1,000 extra views. See if we can make that happen. Okay, no special shoutouts today, so let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is musical-based. Earworms, songs that just get stuck in your head and you'll sing them for days on end, no matter what. Now, with me, it's they come and go, they change a lot, but there's usually some song or other. Right now, it is High and Dry by Radiohead. Let me think. 2 jumps in a week, and bet you think you're pretty clever, don't you, boy? That one. And great song, the original, very excellent song. But when that happens to me, I'll then go searching on the YouTubes, looking for covers, and I'll find some decent ones. A couple of weeks back, it was Kate Bush's Wuthering Heights, when I did the same thing. Although I had to quickly stop it, because the issue with Wuthering Heights is a lot of people try to do Kate Bush's, I guess falsetto is the word. They try to emulate that, and some of them are great at it, others not so much. Whereas I was just hoping to hear people cover the song and do it within their vocal range, but I guess I respect the attempt. But what are some of your favorites? Songs that just get stuck in your head a lot, and they're good songs, but by the time they actually, let go, as it were, you'd rather listen to anything else. Another that does frequently pop up in my head is Stuck in the Middle with You by Van Morrison, which inevitably usually leads to Brown Eyed Girl. Anyway, let me know what you think in a comment below. Okay, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.